under fractions, today we talk about under fractions. Today we talk about what's called reducing them. Believe it or not, I've got a short 2-minute video to whet your appetite for this. I got a little video I want you to watch that kind of helps explain it. Let me see what it is. Video isn't ready. Here it is. Let me turn this up a little bit. Let that look exciting. Oh, wait, this might not be the right one, is it?
Sometimes different fractions can have the same value.
No, you can
4/8,
just listen for this part.
2/4, 1/2. Believe it or not, but all of these are the same fraction. You just can't see it yet because some of these haven't been reduced. Reducing a fraction means that you divide the numerator and denominator by the same number until they're both as small as possible. If you cut a pie into 8 slices, and you and your family eat 4 slices, you've eaten 4/8 of the pie. 4 is the largest number that can go into both the numerator and denominator. So divide 4 and 8 by 4 to get 1/2. So 4/8 can be reduced to 1/2. Likewise, if you cut a pie into 4 slices, and you give 2 slices to your neighbor, you have 2/4 of the pie left. 2 is the largest number that can go into both the numerator and denominator, so divide 2 and 4 by 2 to get 1/2. Just like 4/8, 2/4 can be reduced to 1/2. They can both be reduced to 1/2 because all 3 fractions have the same value. And these are the basics of reducing fractions.
Wow, that was exciting, I think. Now, so, here is the part that you get. First thing you need to know is that if you have a fraction, okay, we have reduced fractions and we have unreduced fractions. We have reduced and we have unreduced. And the little video made a good point about the pizza. You know, you never know what your pizza place is going to cut your pizza into. Oh, it was pie, sorry. You know, sometimes they'll cut your pie, they might just cut it in half, in which case if you ate half of it, actually that would be reduced. If you ate half of it, you'd eat half of it. But most people cut their pie. Sometimes if you're cutting into a big slice, to eat half of it, you'd have to eat 2 out of the 4 pieces. But usually people cut pies into 8 pieces. They cut it this way, they cut it this way, they cut it this way, they cut it this way. And in order to eat half of this pizza, you'd have to eat 4 of them. But somebody could, let's check this out. Let's cut our pie into 16 pieces. Watch how easy it is. First of all, there's 4, right? You it's probably easiest if you cut each little arc in half and then draw the lines to it. It just would make your life a little easier. There's 8. And then if I want to cut it into 16, I'm going to cut each one of these in half again. You can do it. And then connect all of those halves that you put your arcs across. If you cut it into 16 pieces, how many would you have to eat? 8 of them. Now the deal with fractions is we always want to talk about a fraction in its completely reduced form just because it's easier for us to understand. No, you would never go up to somebody and say, hey, it's 16/32 of a pizza, which is the same thing as a half. So in order to reduce, how do we reduce? To reduce, the little thing you need to remember is in order to reduce a fraction, you divide both the top, what's our name for the top? The numerator, and the bottom, which is called the
Denominator.
denominator, by the same number. By the same number. We don't need that. To reduce. To reduce.
No.
For example, here are our examples. If you have 3 over 6, okay. If you have 3 over 6 and you know it's 1/2, but how do I get 1/2 from there? You have to think, what number can you divide both 3 and 6 by? What we call it a common factor. What number do both? You can't say 2. 2 will go into 6 evenly, but 2 doesn't go into 3 evenly. What number does go into both of them?
1.
Alright, you can hear. Let's do 1 and see what happens. 3 divided by 1 is 3, and 6 divided by 1 is 6. If you use 1, you're not going to ever change the fraction, so that's a bad idea. We'll never divide by 1. Allie says 3. If you divide them both by 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. And that is the reduced form. It means the same as 1/2. It takes a little bit of practice. That's why we shall do a lot of practicing. How about the fraction 2 over 8?
2.
Okay, by the way, if you're asked to reduce, I want to see this. I don't want to just see answers. You'll write 2 8s down there. And you have to think. Again, we could divide by 1, but look, if I divide by 1, I'm just going to keep getting the same answer. And then I could say, well, let's divide it by 1 again. Oh boy, well, let's divide it by 1 again. You're still going to get 2 8s. So you don't want to pick 1, even though it is a common factor. What number goes into both 2 and 8, Sophia?
4.
4 does not go into 2.
Oh yeah.
You can't divide 2 by 4.
2.
2. If you divide them both by 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. 1 4. Now, it's interesting to note here, children. Think about this. See this fraction right here that I made? I divided by 2 over 2. 2 over 2 is the same as what number? 1. What happens when you divide something by 1? We just talked about it. It doesn't change. So 2 8s is really being divided by 1. You're really getting the same answer, just in a different form. These are equal things, because when you divide by 1, you get an equal thing. But it's just, this is much easier for us to understand than 2 8s would be. How about this one? 5 over 20. 5 over 20. What number can you divide? And once again, this goes back to our knowing our multiplication tables. Katerina, what number goes into 5 and 20? 5. And if I divide them both by 5, 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 20 divided by 5 is 4. So look, I know that 5 over 20 is the same as 2 over 8 because they both equal 1/4. Will I always get a 1 on top?
No.
Well, what if I had 15 over 20? What number goes into both 15 and 20? 5 again. If I divide them both by 5, this time I don't get a 1 on top, but I get a 3 over 4. Now the bad thing, 5th grade, that happens to you now is anytime you can reduce, you have to reduce. So, here's a book. This is problem number 17 on tomorrow's assignment. I'll give you an answer here. The problem is 4/3 times 1/2. 4/3 times 1/2. Now, when I multiply fractions, what do? I just multiply across. 4 times 1 and 3 times 2. 4 times 1 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. If you write 4 6 down as your answer, unfortunately, from this point forward, it will be wrong. Because you have to look at it. And it's just something that happens when you get older, more responsibility. You have to look at fractions and say, can I reduce 4 6? Is there a number that you can divide both 4 and 6 by? Yes, you can. The easiest one is if you can cut them in half, you can always divide by 2. So 4 divided by 2, 6 divided by 2. You have to write the reduced answer for this, otherwise it will be wrong. Now the nice thing is, when you grade your assignments, those don't get taken for grades, but on quizzes and tests, you can't keep ignoring this and say, well, I got it wrong, too bad. You have to start learning that eventually. Same thing when you add or subtract fractions. If you have this problem, 3/8 minus 1/8. What is 3/8 minus 1/8? 2 over 8. But if you write 2 over 8, you're going to be wrong because what number goes into both 2 and 8?
2.
So you're going to have to reduce it. 2 divided by 2, 8 divided by 2. You've got 1/4. Always have to, for the rest of your life. No longer will you be able to just skate by. One more. 1 and 1/8. 1 and 1/8 plus 4 and 5/8. If you add those fractions or mixed numbers together, you're going to get 5 and 6/8. But if you write 6/8 down without fixing it, it will be wrong because what number can you divide both of those by? 2 and 3/4. You have to write 5 and 3/4, not 6/8. Unfortunately, that's just